Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to a small Godot tutorial video. This is going to be a single video, it won't be a series, but I'm going to be exploring some stuff that I might end up doing in a series when I kind of figure out what I'm going to do for that. So the first thing I want to mention is I have turned ads back on my videos. I had turned them off on my newer videos, but I've turned them back on. There's two reasons for that. Number one, to be blunt, I could use a little bit of extra money. It's not a lot of money, but every little bit helps. And number two is because YouTube seems to be recommending the videos that I have that have ads on them. Surprise, or no surprise there, that YouTube would recommend videos that are going to make them money. So now that that's out of the way, let's get started. In today's video, I'm going to be showing how to do scriptable objects in Godot. In Godot, you use resources for this. And if you haven't heard about scriptable objects in Unity, they're basically an object that you can create before you run the game. So they're not dynamic. So you create them before the game is actually ever run, but they store data. And there's some benefits to them over stuff like a JSON document that could also store data. And I'm sure there are drawbacks as well. I'm still fairly new to them, but I'm going to link in the description to some different videos that I've been watching about them and learning about them. And I think they're an interesting solution to certain problems. And so I kind of wanted to show how to do them in Godot, because when I first learned about them, I didn't know you could do them in Godot. So let's get started. We're going to okay, so I'm using Godot 3.1, the alpha version. So you're going to need to go download the alpha version of Godot 3.1 in order to follow this series. So 3.1 or newer this video. So 3.1 or newer for this video. Then I'm going to create a new project here. And well, you know what? Let me show you what the final product is going to look like by the end of this video, because it might be a little bit longer. So here you can see we've got these 3 character classes right here. We've got our knight class, our wizard class, and our thief class, and we can select them by clicking on these different icons. And these classes are set up as scriptable objects, so it's very easy to edit this data. And then this UI, this character class display element right here, it takes a scriptable object basically to know what data to display. So that's what we're going to be making. Okay, so we'll create a new project here. I'm going to come into my Godot 3.1 folder, select current folder, and I'm going to name this class, scriptable objects tutorial. That should be good. We'll create this folder and create an edit. Okay, so first we're going to need to import in those assets. Now, these assets are, I'll include them in the description as well. They're right here. I'm going to drag them and drop them right into my files right here. But I want to give a shout out to the creator of these assets. He put them on OpenGameArt. I think they're under the public domain license, but it's always good to credit people even if their stuff is public domain. So, and you might want to check the license for sure, but I'm pretty sure that it was public domain. In fact, let's check it real quick. We'll go to 2D art, and his is one of the top ones. If you search characters, search right here, and if we come into click on the author, we can find his RPG portraits. And we can get the license here. It is public domain. I just wanted to double check. I was pretty sure, but yes, it is public domain. Here is his Patreon right here, or her Patreon. I think it's him, but I'm not 100% sure. So you can come and support them in the artwork that they're creating if you want to. And I just wanted to give credit to the creator of these assets. So we're going to start by creating a new user interface right here. And I'm also going to change the project settings. We're going to come into our display here, and we're going to change our display width to 320 and our height to 180. And then we're going to set our test width to 1280 and our test height to 720. This is going to be the Windows size, and this is going to be the camera size, and this is going to be the Windows size. So if we run the game again, we're going to be a lot smaller now. But if we run the game, well, let's move a little bit more forward. So we're going to name this scene right here. We'll call it class display, like this. I think this should be, or maybe character display. Well, but it's not really a character display, it is a class display. So class display, like that. Okay. And we're actually going to change its type. So let's right click on this. We'll do change type. And I'm just going to do under controls, under control nodes. Let's do a color rect. I think this should be fine. We're going to turn on snapping. And I'm going to configure the snap to be 32 by 32. Close. Should be pretty. And then we'll make it, I think we're going to go one smaller than that. That looks the wrong size to me, but it'll probably be fine. Then I'm going to just make this black for now. But we could set it to whatever color we wanted to later. Now we're going to attach a script to this, and we're going to basically set up the UI for the class display. And so we're going to attach a new script, create. And we're not going to actually do much in here yet. We'll just actually get rid of this code and save it. Class display. And if we run this and we select it as our main scene, then we can actually see our game running and our class display. Like that. Although that didn't seem correct. Let's check our project settings here. Yeah, this should be right. 320. Oh, we might need to, I forgot, we need to set our mode to 2D and our aspect ratio to keep width should probably be fine. And close. Let's run it again now. There we go. Now it's running correctly. Okay. Okay, now we're going to basically create our what this UI is going to look like. I think maybe this needs to come out one more. I don't know. That'll be good enough. So we're going to add a margin container because I want to add a slight margin to this. So let's add margin container. For the layout for this, do full rect. That'll make it fill up the entire parent. And then we're going to give it a custom constants down here of 4 for all of the margins. So 4, tab 4, tab 4, tab 4. So this will give us a margin of 4 on all sides. Then we're going to use a VBox container, I think. Yep. And inside of this VBox container, we're going to have one center element, so center container, like this. And this is going to be for our image. So we'll put a texture rect inside of here, texture, right here, texture rect. And then we can give this a texture. So let's just drag our night in for now. We'll drop it right here in this texture. And our center container here should also take up the full rect like there. Okay, now our texture here is blurry. So let's select all of these textures, come up to import, and turn off filter, and then call re-import. And that will fix the blur on your textures there. So come back to scene. Now that we've got our characters sprite here, and you can pretty clearly tell that this is too big. So I think we're going to have to set our margin, or our snap, to 16 by 16. Not really sure why I have it 32 by 32, to be honest. There we go. And make the center container full again. There we go. Yeah, that looks better. And this probably set our class display, bring it in one, I think, maybe two. Oops. Make sure you have the parent selected when you do this. There we go. And we'll make that full. Is this not full? The VBox container. We want it to be full as well. Drag your VBox container back to the margin container. And then make the center container full again. I don't know why it's not filling up the whole space correctly. It feels like vertical maybe needs to expand. We'll just set expand to the vertical. So in your center container here, come down to size flags, and for vertical to expand. We'll see if that fixes it. Okay, I'm going to save. Now in our VBox container here, we need to add another element. And for this element, we're going to add another VBox oh, this should be an HBox container. So that's a mistake on my part. Right click on this, do change type, HBox container. There we go. And then our center container here should expand horizontally and vertically in the size flags. There we go. Now let's add another element to our VBox container, and this is going to be an HBox. No, this will actually be a VBox container. And we should rename this one so that it's an HBox. I mean, it is an HBox container, but I need to rename it. Okay, and then in here, we're going to add a couple more HBox containers, actually. HBox container. Okay, and this HBox container will contain basically two labels. So let's add some labels here. One label, we'll have this one say class. And then we'll give it another label. And the second label will say night. Oops, night. Okay. It's important at this moment to get a new font. So let's come into, I'll also provide the font. This is a font that I made. So let me grab the right font here. I think it's Pixel Robot. Just copy this. Well, actually, let's just drag it into here. There we go. Pretty sure that's the right one. Let me make sure there's no other fonts here. Okay. So we're going to need to create a new font. Let's get rid of our second label, actually, right now. And we'll come into here. We'll name this first label right here now it can be called label. That's fine. Scroll down until you see custom fonts. Right here, click the font and do new dynamic font. And we're going to click on that new dynamic font we just created. And, and that should open up some information about it right here in the editor. So we're going to we need to give some font data to it. So we'll grab our pixel art font and drag it and drop it right here. Okay. So now we have that font data. Now this dynamic font, we want to save this so we can use it in multiple places. So we're actually going to click on this little arrow right here for the dynamic font, click edit. That'll bring us here, and then we can click on this little object properties, do file, save as, and we'll just call it pixel font.tres, like that, save. Now it creates it as a resource so we can use that font in multiple places if we need to. So let's duplicate our label here. And this second label, we're going to call this one data. So the first one is the label, which is class, and the second one's the data. So in this case, that's going to be night. Night, like this. But they're leaning right here. And we want them to be separated. So one thing we can do is we can make the data take up, if you come into its size flags, we can do expand on horizontal. But we need our HBox container to also expand on horizontal. So size flags, expand on horizontal. No, we shouldn't need to do that. It's our VBox container. Yeah. So right now, our VBox container is only taking up the space that it actually needs. But we want it to take up all the space that it possibly can. So we're going to come to size flags and do expand on horizontal. Now this is close, but because our center container and our VBox container are both expand on horizontal, it is dividing it 50-50 basically here in our HBox container. So we don't want our image here to take up that much. We just want it to take up exactly what it needs. So we want our center container to expand vertically, but no longer horizontally, like this. Okay? But now our label right here, and you can see now our data is, when we do expand horizontal, it takes up all the space that it possibly can inside of this area. And now we could change the alignment to be right. And now we've got a right alignment on this one and just a left alignment on this one, but this one takes up all the space that it possibly can, which is good. It'll give us more space for stuff. So instead of having this be called HBox container, we're going to call it class. And then we can duplicate these right here. So we can duplicate the class right here. And we can call this one health. Like that. We can duplicate this one. And we can call this one strength. And we can duplicate this one. And we can call this one intelligence. Okay. Now, I don't know why this is, but there's a really big space here. And it might have something to do with how I set up the font. Like maybe if I remove some spacing here, like -1 or something. Yeah. So it might be my font has issues. Size 16, that looks good. I think maybe if I just remove a bunch from here so that my font's not quite so spaced out, we'll get what we want here. So this container needs to go back to full. There we go. The margin container. And now we've got a decent spacing on those. Don't know if you want the spacing to be any different than what it is here. Yeah, I think there might have been something with my text or my font, and that's why it was kind of being weird like that. But I think this is good enough. So then we'll change each one of these. So let's change the text and the label here to match health. We'll change the text and the data here to be like 100 for now. And we'll come into here for this label, strength. And this data, 100. And then here we'll do the same thing. Label, intelligence, and 100. Okay. And save. So we've correctly set up our UI, and it should scale fairly well, I think. Like if you, well, I guess maybe we need like a center container for the text here, if you want it to scale pretty well. But this is good enough for now. This is good enough for the tutorial, because this isn't the focus of the tutorial. Now what we need to create is our first scriptable objects. And so the way that we can do this is by creating a new script. We'll come into scripts, we'll do file, new script, and you have this inherit from resource, like this. And we'll call it right here, class stats. Class stats, like that. And create. Okay, so it extends resource. Now we can give it a special name using class underscore name, and we'll just name it class stats, like this. And we can give this some data, basically. This is how we choose what data to give it. So our class stats have the data that we did in our class display, right? So we'll say export string var class name. Oops, can't use that. Yeah, what are we going to call this? Maybe just character class? Class type. Class type. Let's do class type. We'll say export int var health. Set it to a default of 100. Export int var strength. Set that to a default of 100. Export int var intelligence, and export image var profile. And maybe we just call this type. Does it really need to be called class type? Maybe it's just called type. We'll set it to a default of night, like that. Okay, and profile, we'll set it to equal to null by default. So what does this do? The export basically just allows you to edit these variables in the editor over here on the side, and I'll show you what I mean there. But we're just creating some variables and giving them some values, and we're using export in order to be able to edit them manually. And the type of export that we choose, like image, int, and string, will determine how it looks over here and what options it gives us for editing it. So we can save this right there. And now that we've saved this, we can actually create a class. So let's create a new class, and the way you do this, once you've saved this, is coming over here into Files. I'm just going to click that to show it as a list. We're going to right click and we're going to do New Resource. And then over here, this lists all the resources that we have available to us. However, because we did class name class stats, we now have a new resource called class stats. And you can see it right here, class stats. And I haven't set an icon for this, but you can set an icon, so that's why it shows error here. But it doesn't really matter that much. Now, when we click on class stats, it will let us save this. So let's save this as we'll save it as night. Yeah, that should be fine, right? Let's not do the night though. Let's do the wizard first, because our UI already kind of shows the night. So let's do the wizard. So we'll call it wizard.tres and save. Okay, so what does that do? It creates a new resource file over here that basically has this script attached to it. And so now you can see when we double click on this resource, or when we're clicked on this resource, over here in our inspector, we can see the different variables that we saved. So we can update these in the inspector. So I'm not going to cover all of the benefits of scriptable objects versus other ways of storing data, the benefits and drawbacks or whatever. I'm not really going to cover that. I think there are other videos that kind of talk about that, and other places that kind of talk about that. But one of the things that I do really like about them is that if you have a designer on your team that is not a programmer, it is going to be very easy for them to edit this data over here. They don't have to know how to use JSON. They don't have to know how to program. There's a lot of stuff that they don't need to know in order to still be able to affect the way the game plays. And that's really good. Or even if you're a programmer, the less time you spend in code, honestly, the better while you're making your game. You want to set up your game in a way that you can design it quickly and have minimal the less programming that you have to do when you're actually designing the game, the better. Because when you're making your game engine or whatever, you've got to do quite a bit of programming to get that set up, the base for your game. But once you start actually creating content and designing the way the game interacts, if you don't have to touch code a lot there, it can be very helpful. So I like this. So let's create our type here. We're going to give it a type of wizard right there. And we're going to set its health to maybe 70. Set its strength to 10, I guess, and its intelligence to 100. And then the profile here, because we did image, we can actually select an image. Let's load an image and we'll select the wizard profile. And then we just Control S to save, and we've saved this new wizard scriptable object. It's over here. It's data now. It's all saved. And if we want to create another class, we can easily right click and do new resource and create a new class. But let's start using the class we have. So let's go back to 2D here. We'll click on our class display. And we're going to give this class display, we're going to give it access to that scriptable object that we just created. So we'll say, we'll create a ready function here. So this is the function that's run when the game starts. We'll say data equals load. Well, we'll call this class type equals load. Well, class data equals load. And we'll select our wizard.tres like that, and we can load this class data. Then what we want to do is use that information to update all of the UI. So let's start with the very basics. So the first thing we can update is the profile image. So we'll do var profile equals get node. And I'm just going to come over here and come to our texture right here. Let's see, come back into script, texture, and drag this and drop it right here. And you can see that is pretty cool. It just gets that path right here to our texture and gets the node there for us. And then we can say profile dot texture equals class data dot profile. Okay, and let's save and let's run our game. And what we should see, if all things go correctly, is that our UI has updated to be the wizard right here. We've got the wizard. And I want these to be evenly distributed. It bothers me that they're like not quite evenly distributed. And I know there's a way to fix it, but I don't want to spend the time to do that inside of this video. So let's do our other ones. However, let's try and make this just a little bit easier on ourselves here. We can actually get this node up here. So we can do onReady var profile equals, and then we'll just get this right here. Like this. So the onReady value, the onReady keyword here, I should say, makes it so that it's like putting it in the ready function. Because technically this node, when we're creating these variables, this node might not exist yet. But if we do onReady, then it should exist. And then we can do all our other ones as well. So onReady var, and we'll say class data. Oh man, my naming is not going very well. Class label, I should say. And maybe this should be profile image. Profile dot texture. I don't know. Profile image dot texture. Yeah, that's pretty good, I guess. Class label equals get node. And we should be able to do the same thing here. But make sure that you get the data version. So come to script here. Grab the data label and drag it right there. Okay. And then we should be able to copy this. And I'm running out of room here. I need to give myself more room. We should be able to copy this and then change this to health label. And change this to health. And then do it again. And change this to strength. Oops. Strength. I feel like I'm going to have typos somewhere in strength. Strength data. Strength. Okay, it looks like I have it correct. And then we'll do intelligence label. And call this intelligence. Okay. Then we should be able to say, for each one, class label dot class label dot text equals class data dot type, which is the string, this night text or whatever that we have in our wizard. Class label dot text equals class data dot health. And this is health label. Health. Strength label dot text equals class data dot strength. And intelligence label dot text equals intelligence label class data dot intelligence. There we go. Okay, however, we're going to get an error when we run this because we're not converting our types. So our health here is an int, but we need to set this to a string. So we can really easily convert by just doing str around each of these right here. And run it again. And there we go. We have class wizard, health 70, strength 10, intelligence 100, just like what we set up in our scriptable object. Now, the benefit of having a scriptable object like that is that we currently, our class display here has a reference to the scriptable object, right? We're getting a reference right here. But that scriptable object is going to be the same scriptable object that our battle unit uses to detect the stats of the wizard. It's going to be the same scriptable object that is displayed that is used when you're just looking at your character's stats. So you can have the same object and have it be basically you choose what other areas of the game get access to it. Because it's just data. It's just data like an image. So now that we've set this up, let's create a function here called function update class display. And this will take a new scriptable object that we're going to just call class data, like this. And then we're just going to pass or do all of the same stuff that we did there. Now, we can just, instead of running all that code, we can just call update class display, and we can pass in our class data right here. So now it's in a convenient function that we can possibly call in other locations, which is what we're going to do next. But let's create our different, I may end up doing this as like a 2 or 3 part video just because it's getting kind of long here. But let's create our other classes here. So class stat right here. We already did the wizard, so let's do the knight now. Knight right there. And we'll come into the knight resource we just created. Set his health to 80, strength to 90, and intelligence to 30. And we'll set his profile to the knight profile right there. And save. Let's create another class. And you can see how easy it is to add classes to your game now. And we'll do a new resource, class stats, call this one thief, and save. And make sure we've got the thief resource. So thief. Set his health to something like 65. I don't know. Strength to 50. Intelligence to 70 or something. I don't know. Just making this up. And we'll load our profile, which will be our thief right here. And save. And now, instead of passing in our wizard here, let's try our thief. Like this. thief.tres and run the game. And we should see our UI correctly updates for the thief class. I feel like we could get our, yeah, let's not mess with it. It's bothering me, but I don't want to mess with it. And I think that's going to be it for this video. I'm going to do another one real quick, and I'll probably upload them within a day of each other that will show the rest of the concept, which is getting the buttons that you can click and it will switch to the different classes. But you can imagine it's pretty easy. You just give each button its own reference to the scriptable object, and then that button just calls update class display on our class display, passing in its scriptable object that it contains. So it's not too tricky. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found it at least interesting and potentially useful, depending on the kinds of games that you're planning on making. And whether you see something like data like this that can be easily created over on the right hand side that designers can easily access, whether you see that as being beneficial to your project or not. So I just wanted to make this video because I was interested in scriptable objects and I wanted to know how to make them in Godot, and it was kind of tricky to figure it out. I was able to find the information, but it wasn't like an easy Google search, at least when I was looking for it. Now it may be because this video might pop up, but that's the plan. People who are interested in scriptable objects in Godot, hopefully this video was what you were looking for. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate your support, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and I will talk to you all later.